Yes, so thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome everyone. I'm Dominika Valat, and I'm the president of the #OMG KRK Foundation, which is the host of today's event. This is 11th edition of those virtual funders breakfast, but this one is special because we want to focus on early stage teams, and we have brought like nice speaker that will share their insights with you. But before we go into content, like I'd love to tell you a few words about the foundation. So our mission is to build a world-class innovation ecosystem in Krakow, and we do that through organization of education events similar to this one, but also like a formal acceleration programs. And we also, facilitate the matchmaking between different actors in our ecosystem, but also internationally. So you have, when you need someone like an investor or mentor for your project, or anyone else that you want to connect in the ecosystem, we are the right place to reach out to. So today we will have some sample of our educational programs. So we will have Mor from APX venture capital that will share the insights with us on how to get the first investment. So welcome for our edition, and we are looking forward to share to your insights. I just wanted to say thank you to our sponsor, the region of Małopolska, that it's supporting this and a few former editions of those breakfasts. So once again, thank you for their ongoing support. And Mor, the floor is yours. I'm looking forward to your insights, and I'm sure the teams are also looking forward to it. So share some tips with us, and we would be following up with some questions later on. Hi again.
Hi, and Jen Dobre?
Dobre, yes, very good.
So, maybe also an anecdote about myself. I actually been to Krakow many times. I used to work at Hubraum. So I had the pleasure of being in Krakow, and actually I really liked it. And I think it's a super beautiful city. I actually encourage my friend to go there for their holiday. So for me, it's a great opportunity to virtually meet you. I think I mentioned before, usually I live in Berlin, but now I'm currently in Tel Aviv. I came here for a wedding, and it's so hot in here. So we are all sitting like at home with like the ACs. So
we are also sitting at home, but because of the rain. So
so I guess we're all in the same situation. I will quickly share my screen with you, but just kind of like just to give you kind of like maybe something before we will start. So I'm originally from Israel, which means that feel free to jump in the middle and ask questions. It's totally fine with me. I don't get offended. The opposite. I think that if no one will ask me a question, I'll be like, okay, what's going on? What's wrong? So I'm more than happy to answer any kind of question. So before we'll kind of like go deep into what is APX and what I'm doing and what APX is doing. So I think I mentioned that I'm a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Israel. I served in the Israel Defense Force for 3 years as part of I was an HR officer. I grew up in the Israeli smart mobility ecosystem. So that's where I started my career. Later, I was working for Deutsche Telekom for Hubraum, that you probably know also from Krakow. I'm living in Berlin in the past more than 3 years already. I barely speak German, and I don't know how it is about you, but I really miss kind of like meeting people in random events during coffee breaks. I feel like we all kind of like a bit tired of this Zoom call. So I really want to make it as dynamic as possible. And I really like the fact that we can all meet later in breakout rooms, because I think that those kind of like random meetings are the one that eventually kind of like where you meet the most interesting people. That's about me. That's about the kind of like, if you want to find me on LinkedIn, feel free to do that. So now a bit about APX. APX is a joint venture of Axel Springer and Porsche. It's not, and that's something that is important for me to mention, it's not a strategic VC, meaning we are not looking for solutions that only can be relevant for Axel Springer as a media company or for Porsche from the automotive or mobility world. We're very much industry agnostic. We exist from 2018. So we are kind of like early stage startup ourselves. And we invest in a very early stage pre-seed startups from Europe, but I would say that Corona gave us the opportunity or the privilege to invest all over the world. So basically, we invested in companies from the UK, which is no longer Europe, and India and the US and Israel. So we are very much kind of like this diversity, and diversity, it's a word that you will hear quite often in my presentation today. And as I mentioned, we usually come up as the first investor in a startup. So that's kind of like, if there are a few things that you need to remember from like today's session, is that not industry, we are industry agnostic, early stage startup, and from all over the world. And we will get back to that later. The agenda for today, I know it's like a very, very early morning, so I don't want to take a lot of your time. So I will quickly touch on a few topics that, in my opinion, probably are interesting for you. As I mentioned, if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know. So the first point is, what do early stage investors look for in evaluating teams? And I cannot speak on behalf of all the early stage investors that I know. I can speak on behalf of like APX and also a few things that I got from working with early stage startups with Hubram. What are the milestones teams should achieve ahead of pre-seed investments, and how we can at APX help you Polish startups to grow and be part of our family. Before we'll start, I'll just mention my role within APX is I'm the strategic partnerships and growth, and in general what it means that I'm working with our B2B startups on everything related to their go-to-market strategy and sales enablement, and help them to kind of like better understand the basic questions that in my opinion, not only B2B, but also B2C startup should ask: which problem I'm solving and to whom I'm solving this problem. And that's what we are doing. And besides that, I'm supporting our companies with business development, business introductions, and how we can create kind of like an overarching collaboration to position APX as the leading VC in Europe and beyond. So you will get the frame of what is it that I'm doing. So let's start. What are we looking for? The first thing, and I guess you heard it a lot, it's a team. Few important things. We at APX, we only invest in two, like the list of two people. We would never invest in a single founder unless it's like Elon Musk or something like that now decided to go on his own. Maybe then we will consider that. But besides that, we're investing only in teams of at least two people. Because we believe that you can have the best technology and the best product, but it won't sell itself. You need at least someone else to join you and believe in what you are doing for us to come and say, okay, that's interesting, we will invest. So we want the teams to be ambitious enough and passionate enough to kind of like be able to lead the company, because we do know, and I guess I don't need to tell you, that at the beginning, it's very, very difficult. Many of the startups pivot or shift, and only if you have this strong team that is able to kind of like also be agile, you will be able to take the company and to really understand what is the direction that the company should go. In general, we are, as every other VC, we are looking for a high financial returns for our investors. And therefore, that's something that, especially when we don't have a lot of data points so early stage, for us, the teams, it's very, very important. We want to see diverse teams. And that's something that we really, really encourage. Different backgrounds, different genders, different cultures, so to have different perspective on the same problem or solution. And besides that, we kind of like also put to ourselves this goal to invest only in companies that create great impact on people and on our planet. So most of our startups, we are not, I wouldn't position us or kind of like brand us as kind of like an impact investor, because we're not. But we believe that no matter what it is that we're doing, we need to create some kind of like, create some kind of impact on people, on the society and community in a good or positive place. We do not, and that's something I didn't mention, we do not invest in hardware, and we also do not invest in kind of like startups that need a long R&D processes. So it's mainly, I would say, it's very consumer focused investment, but we will talk about it later. But in general, team, it's all about the people. That's where it starts, that's where it ends, in my opinion. And that's what we want to see. And in our kind of like the way we also challenging the founders, the first few calls will be only about the team dynamic. So that's something that you definitely need to take in consideration. The second thing, problem. And I know it sounds maybe very basic, and I would also say sometimes very stupid. Of course, you're solving a problem. I mean, if you wouldn't be solving a problem, what else are we doing here? So let me tell you a secret. When I meet startups, especially so early stage, sometimes they imagine there is a problem, or sometimes based on one call that they have with someone, they're like, okay, we found our problem, we can find a solution. I can tell you that we had a company in our portfolio that basically had this kind of like super complicated solution. They spoke with someone they met at Shell, and he told them, listen, this is exactly the problem that we have. If you will solve it, it will be amazing. We can help you to kind of like start already pilots with Shell. And they're like, okay, it's amazing. We spoke with Shell. They said that they need it. After 2 months, this lead went cold. And let me tell you something. No one else from Shell had kind of like took this opportunity and say, okay, we have this problem. You cannot create a company based on someone that told you that he has this problem. You need to talk to clients and to really solve a problem that exists. Whenever we meet early stage startups, it's always important for us to know that you did your kind of like market research. Talk to potential customers, try to understand the problem and not assuming that there is a problem. And we see it a lot. So that's something that kind of like we highly encourage. And I also, as a kind of like someone working with B2B companies, I see it quite often that founders, and that's kind of like sometimes very, I would say, sad to see, they need to shift the problem they are solving all the time because it's actually not big enough and not painful enough. And if you cannot pinpoint and tell someone, I know you have I would say a problem, and this is the problem, no one will buy your solution. People won't spend money, especially corporates or SMEs, on problem that is not painful enough. And that's something that, in my opinion, it's kind of like if you would ask me as a B2B person, and also as a B2C person, but we can talk about B2C on a different scenario, and that's one of the most important things. Second, who are your competitors? And sometimes I laugh when I see someone's slide is like, our competitors are Google, Facebook, and Amazon. No. Sometimes your competitors can be a pen and a paper or an Excel file. And I'll tell you, those are the most dangerous competitors. The ones that are not that sophisticated, the ones that are not the Google and the Amazon. Because if you're trying to solve, let's go with the Shell example, they try to solve this kind of like problem that cost that stores, like all those small grocery convenience stores and gas stations, they don't know who are their clients or how many people are in the store. You know who is their competitors? The bell that you kind of like ring on the table, and that's how you count how many people. And that is super simple competitor. Without you don't spend there a lot of money, not that sophisticated, and eventually that was one of the main competitors that they had to kind of like struggle with. And believe me, it's sometimes more difficult to compete with a Bell or a pen and a paper than a Google or a Facebook. So really do your homework, try to understand your competitors. And I know usually people will ask you, what is your USP? What is it that you are doing better? To be honest, I don't even look at better. I look on different, because I think that especially as an early stage startup, you need to be the expert or the leader of your segment. If someone will now try to convince me and say, try to use a software X because it's better than Zoom because it has this feature, all I will think about is I want to use Zoom. I don't buy a different product because of the feature. I buy a feature or features. I buy it because it's different, because you look at it from a different perspective. And that's what I would recommend you when you kind of like want to tackle a problem. Don't base your solution based on features, but really try to understand how you tackle it in a different way. So we can talk about problems, I would say, for a long, long time, and I'm more than happy to answer questions, obviously, but have it in mind whenever you're trying, and I know that you are both, all of you, I think most of you know which problem are you solving, but always, and I think that's one of the basics, try to ask yourself, how painful is this problem? How big is the problem? The third thing here, huge market. Eventually, it's all about scaling. We as a VC or as an investor, and I don't know, probably talk to also business angels, we want to understand that in 5 years from now, you can be a company that's worth $100 million or euros or more. And if you don't have this kind of like huge market that grows that you can tackle, and even if you will acquire, I don't know, 2% of this market, we will see some revenues, it doesn't worth it. Having said that, you need to be very specific and clear about your segment. And I will say it, and I know it sounds also very basic, but sometimes in all those kind of like simplicity, there is truth. You cannot solve all the problems to all the people in the world. I know sometimes it's difficult to understand it. For me, it was also sometimes very difficult. You cannot solve a problem to all the corporates. Not going to happen. And I'll be more brutal than that. If I made a company and they're telling me that they have this amazing solution for a corporate, I'm like, okay, they didn't do your homework. Your corporate's not supposed to be your first clients. In my opinion, it's even a curse when you're an early stage startup. And even when you say, okay, you know, I can solve this problem to corporate, what a corporate means, how many people work there, which kind of industry, what are the geography, who is your customer persona? Someone working in, I don't know, Intel wouldn't probably be the same customer persona as someone working in Sony, for example. So be super specific about your segment. Make sure it's focused, it's clear, and it's big enough. Obviously, you don't need to go to kind of like really, really like small, I would call it features segmentations, but you need to understand what is your segment, because that's the only way that you will be able to understand how to tackle it or what's your go-to-market strategy. If you don't know to whom are you selling, in which companies, what is the customer persona, and I would say even more than that, your customer persona, you need to know her or him in the most deep way. What's their education? What did they study? What is an internal win for them? What they are doing when they are not at work? Who is their boss? Who is holding the budget? Are they only the decision maker, or they can also approve budget? And if they can approve the budget, from which kind of like amount? You will never be able to do it if you don't know your segment. And in a way, try to think about yourself. If you could choose a restaurant, and one restaurant selling pizza, pasta, salad, and a burger, and the other restaurant selling only a burger, I would assume you would go to the one that's selling burger because you are like, okay, if they're selling burgers, means that they are just the expert in making those burgers. If the restaurant is selling all of those things, might be that all these things are very mediocre, and might be that me won't be able to find there like the exact burger with the exact toppings that I like, because they cannot provide me with all of those. You need to be very specific so you will be able to adapt your solution to your clients. And that's something you will know only by being super specific about your segment. If any of you wants, later feel free to send me a LinkedIn message. I can share with you a few questions on how you can define your customer persona. And I would highly recommend, if you want to get better understanding of segment or beachhead strategy, meaning kind of like what is the strategy that you are going to attack when having your startup, is to read Crossing the Chasm by Christopher Mor. It's a super old book. In my opinion, it's the basic, and I would be here, it's very specific about B2B, but also as a B2C startup. I don't need to tell you that eventually B2C companies spending tons of money on marketing to getting to their clients. You need to understand how to find your clients. That's the most important thing. Startup needs to sell. If you're only dealing so early stage with like, yeah, let's hire the best talent when you didn't start to sell, I'm sorry. No. So that's kind of like maybe I learned in the Israeli military that if you have something to say, you need to sum it up in 3 points. So you'll see most of my presentation are like 3 points. So that was my last point about what it is that early stage startups, early stage VCs are looking for. And I can open it up for now for a question if you want, or we can also jump into the next part and then. I don't see any question, right? Am I wrong, Dominica?
Like I can ask the question, but
I have a question. You mentioned about a team dynamics. What's the right team dynamics you're looking for?
Yeah, so I'll be pretty obvious. Sometimes we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We want to see that you have some kind of like your background and your skill kind of like not compete with one another, but to complete one another. So if someone has a business background, we expect the other ones to have some kind of like product or tech background. Of course, it's not necessarily the truth, and it's somewhere in between. We have really strong companies where both co-founders, they have similar background, but they just decided to kind of like divide the responsibilities in between of them. But we want to see that there is a good communication. I mean, that you can actually speak to your co-founder, you can actually do things together. We also have founders that are husband and wife, and brother and a sister. You also have that. I would say it's really depend on the family kind of like dynamic. But we want to see that you complete one another, at least.
May I ask more, how are you assessing that? Like what's the standard process in verifying all those 3 points, or at least this, you know, team, let's say, expertise, and also, you know, diversity dynamics, etc. Like how do you assess that as you know, VC? What's the process, and what are your, let's say, ideas on how to really verify that during probably a few calls that you have with the teams?
So first thing first, you need to have, I would say, you need to have a strong LinkedIn profile. I know that sometimes you're like, okay, we don't care about your profile. We are CDO, we are founders of a company. We don't want to be hired. It doesn't matter. In our world, LinkedIn profile is the kind of like for the outsider, this is what matters. This is what we're looking for. I don't think you need to write there, like if you were a waitress in a restaurant, we don't care about that. But if you did any course, if you have specific skills, write them down, make sure to have kind of like at least a decent profile that really shows what it is that you're doing and what you are. I sometimes surprised to see founders applying to APX, and it says that they are still working either in their previous workplace or they are still working there. No, we want to invest in a company, not necessarily, of course, there's always kind of like some things that exceptional, but we want to invest in founders and give them our money if they still work in, or they still have their own agency. We want to see that the founders it's like their full-time position, and you all know that being a founder, it's not something you do on the side. It's not like a university project. So make sure that the name of your company mentioned there, that it says there what is it that you are doing. I think that sometimes people underestimate the kind of like the common sense, and sometimes it's all about like gut feeling. We have calls with founders, everything today is via Zoom, and we want to see that we can have a nice conversation with them, that we know more about them, on their personality, what it is that they enjoy doing, what it is that they are not enjoy doing, and to understand the team dynamic. For example, we saw in many calls that only one person speaks. If you are a team of 2 to 3 people, it's not supposed to be a mess when people jump into each other kind of like words. This is what in Israel it's very typical. I would say usually try not to do it, but have a clear responsibilities. If you have a CDO, you should talk about the tech things. We don't want to see a one-man show. Companies built on one-man show, unless you're Tesla, it's usually not a company that we believe that the team and dynamic is working very well. I don't think anyone, it's not that we ask you to do a manifest, but try to have really clear responsibilities, try to have your LinkedIn in place, and try to show us the feeling that we want to bet and we want to give you the money because this company and the team is the best team we ever saw.
Okay.
Mor, if I can jump in an effort to keep us on track on the agenda, because I think we're only halfway through your presentation, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I will quick. Okay, so yeah, I will try to be faster. What do we want to see? And here I gave you an exercise. I thought that we might have time to do this exercise, but never mind. You can maybe take a picture of the screen or I can share it with you later. This is something we call problem solution fit. After we invest in startups, we have venture development sessions with them because we know that founders are not necessarily have all the skills. We don't expect anyone to have like 3 companies that they already sold. Some of the people coming right from university, some of them used to work in a company before. And in order for us to understand that you know what is the problem solution fit, we have this small exercise. And here it's basically a template where you need to kind of like implement the solution based on your startup. So I won't read it, but you can kind of like maybe take even a few seconds to start to kind of like read it for yourself. And I believe, or we believe, to begin with, you need to be able to complete this kind of like exercise, this few sentences, and to be very specific in what is it that you are selling and to whom. Don't talk in big words. Don't say to all the corporates in the world, or don't say that, yes, you know, it's like all the people are using this solution and it's an awful solution, because the truth is never black or white. So try to take those kind of like sentences or those exercises and to see if you can really use this template and to kind of like throw your solution into it. In the way we saw it, the way we structure and work with startups, usually after a few weeks, you become more specific and you understand better. So it's always interesting to see how you fill it in and to begin with after our investment and also after a few weeks. But we can talk about it later and I can share with you this exercise. The second thing, you know what you need. And if you don't know, it's also fine, but you are not afraid to ask. First, how much money do you need and why? I know sometimes companies say, yeah, we want my 1 million. Why is that? Yeah, because we need it for marketing and events and for hiring. No, you need to know your numbers. If you're raising 1 million or if you're raising 500K, you need to know why and what is it that you're planning to make with the money. It's not kind of like, hey, I'll just ask for more money and see if I'll get it. Second, which kinds of introduction and connection you need and why. As I mentioned, I'm supporting our portfolio companies with business development. Sometimes I get those requests, hey, I want introduction to Deutsche Bank, Deutsche Post, and I don't know, Axel Springer. I'm like, why? Your pilots or the kind of like, we can see it from the cold call from the funnel, most of your leads converted into clients are small, medium businesses. Why do you want to talk to those companies? Always challenge yourself and ask, and to be very precise in what introduction, and also to say, I want to talk to someone from Deutsche Bank, it's not going to help me. Try to understand how you can help the people that wants to help you. You want to talk to someone from Deutsche Bank? Okay, cool. What is the title? Who is the person? Do your research on LinkedIn. I highly recommend to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator to do all this kind of like sourcing and filtering. I think the first month is for free. I don't work for LinkedIn. I think it's highly beneficial to understand whom are you targeting. The third thing, knowledge gaps. When startups join APX, we basically share with them this kind of like chart and we ask them what it is that you're confident about, that we don't need to speak about, what it is that you are not, that you are uncertain about, and what are your biggest challenge. Based on those things, we will be able to support you. If you won't be transparent with us, we won't be able to help you. We believe in kind of like a push system. Push us to get what you want, what you need, we will do it. But don't expect anyone to know what is the problems that you have. And we all have challenges and we all have knowledge gaps. It's totally fine. If you are not mentioning it, we would never be able to help you. So it's kind of like a relationship. You need to be honest. And that's how I would say you should look at investors, but that's a totally different topic. It's like a marriage eventually, until someone exit or go bankrupt. But it's also in a marriage like that. Communication, and your investor should know how we can support you. You make people happy. And that's going back to the same thing I mentioned before. You need to know your clients. You need to become their expert, their friend, the person they call if they have specific problem, because you're the expert in this topic. You're not a service provider. Only if you will become their expert, someone that can help them with, I don't know, cloud optimization or hiring people, they won't replace you. And that's something that you need to understand and to remember. If you are specific and you become an expert in specific segmentation, believe me, your clients will see you as an expert and they will call you. Traction, it's also something I would say so early stage. I don't expect to see like, you know, I don't even expect to see 5 demos or something like that, but I want to see that there's some traction with cold calls, and that you understand what it takes to kind of like convert someone from lead to qualified lead and then to a demo call. Show us some traction that you know with whom are you talking, and your clients always want more. They want more features. They want to become your design partners, that if tomorrow you'll be gone, they will cry. That's what we want to see. You need to make not your investor, your clients happy. We will be happy if your clients are happy. Okay. I will go right into it because maybe that's the important part is about APX. So I think I mentioned before, we used to be an accelerated program. You probably heard about plug and play. We are not plug and play. We are APX, Access Springer and Porsche. We are an early stage investors investing in more than 100 startups. Maybe the most well-known company is N26, the digital bank. We have 55 million euros to invest. And this is kind of like what we aim on doing. We invest up to 500 euros in a startup until Series A. To begin with, we always start with a 50K investment for 5%. That's our due diligence. In that time, when we invest in 50K, we are working with you and our venture development, and then we will be able to do follow-ons with other investors. That's something you need to take in consideration. We are super fast. We can invest sometime in 2-3 weeks, and that's what's unique about us. And then we provide you the opportunity to get into Porsche and Axel Springer, to test, to have some pilots, to talk to experts. And that's the way we can do due diligence in a bit more kind of like fair way. So in a way, I would say that we put our money where our mouth is. And in my opinion, it's a privilege to be so early stage, don't need to show a lot of traction, super fast, and then you're part of the family. So we will be happy to invest up to 500K. As mentioned, what are we looking for? Exceptional early stage founders. All the pictures, by the way, in presentation are our founders. It's not Shutterstock. We want to see exceptional founders that know what they are doing, know where they want to take the company, and not afraid to admit if they need any kind of help. And that's what we're here for. We believe that the VC is not only the money. There's so much money going around. I know in the Polish ecosystem, there's also a lot of money. It's not only about the money. It's about the connection, the introductions, and the ability to kind of like share knowledge with other founders. So money is nice, but make sure to have smart money invested in you. We, as mentioned, we're working with you. We have kind of like an internal platform that we build with that you can actually directly connect to expert mentors, investors, and 100 of founders in our portfolio. We invest in more than 100 companies that help one another to kind of like share best practices, introduction, etc. And we support in closing follow-on financing rounds. I would say that besides all the things that I mentioned about corporate connections and business development, blah, 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 since we invested in so many companies, we have a lot of insights and data points that we can share. And we have some kind of like benchmarks that we will be able to share with you. And we have a team of people, and I will show it to you in a second, that already worked with so many founders, early stage founders that can support you with hands-on knowledge and best practices. And in my opinion, that's super crucial to know that first of all, you have community of founders that you can talk to, and that we as a VC met so many founders with so many business models that we can actually support you to kind of like gain more momentum. Invested in 100 companies, as I mentioned before, all over the world, more than 20 countries. We kind of like see ourselves as 100% digital VCs, meaning you don't need to even move to Berlin. It's something we used to require before. Everything is digital, everything is online, super international. So we don't see it as a problem at all. And maybe the important thing that's related to you, and that's also why I'm very curious to meet you. We launched a partnership with Ringier Springer Poland to scout for the best teams in the Polish market and to help them to get momentum and pilots either with Axel Springer Porsche or with Ringier Springer in Poland. In future, we can also do a co-investment together. So for us to have some kind of like local ecosystem player on ground, it's something that we really appreciate. We don't see ourselves as like, hey, I guess this is this German VC somewhere there. We see ourselves as part of the Polish ecosystem. We're going to be also in Wolf Summit, so let me know if you're also going to be there. And for us, it's crucial. We have partners, we have people on stage that can support with operation, co-investment, media for equity. And that's why for us, it's super interesting to kind of like get to know and get exposure in the Polish ecosystem. Besides that, more on what we're doing, because I mentioned a lot of business development. We support our companies with getting introduction to German Mittelstand, SMEs. It's very, very difficult. So we have this kind of like unique events every time on a different topic, HR, a new work, AI is the next one, manufacturing, etc. We did an event called VC for Female Founders. We support female founders and diverse team. We launched the event with over 50 and 60 VCs from the DACH region. So we have a huge network of VCs. And this is our team. As you can see, we are coming from so many different countries. So I would say I don't even need to mention that everything is in English. And that's about APX. I would say that we are early stage VC, but a long-term partner. That's the way I would look at us. And yeah, I think that was my spiel for today. Happy to answer any question.
I have two questions. First one is, do you have some kind of window in which you accept the applications, or is it like the whole year?
No, I mean, we don't have any windows. Founders need money now, not in a month and not in 2 months.
Okay. I'm just asking because, for example, in Y Combinator, there's some kind of batch.
No batches, no nothing. I mean, not at all. And by the way, I forgot to mention, we invest in 3 to 5 companies per month. So it's not like those huge batches that no one knows one another. Sometimes we have less, sometimes we have more, but you can apply now and someone will contact you tomorrow.
Okay, great. The second question is kind of connected to this.